All right, John, we are back with the next set of top 10 games for blank system as voted by all of you across Bluesky and YouTube. And this week we've got the Game Boy/Game Boy Color. There was a contingent of people who thought there was enough strength in both lineups to have them separate. But there's similar enough in my mind where it just, to me, the Game Boy Color is just Game Boy games with color. So I asked everybody to combine them.
Right. Yeah, the Game Boy Color library is good. I think you probably could separate them, but you're kind of splitting hairs at that point, because as you say, they're so similar in capability. When I think Game Boy, I think both of them.
Yeah, and let's be honest, in that case, we'd end up with, here's Link's Awakening. Here's Link's Awakening's DX.
Yeah.
DX. I combined the two. If they said one or the other, it combined, because yeah, you have the color dungeon, you have a few minor upgrades, but it's still essentially the same game.
Mm-hmm.
So it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. But I'm curious to pick your brain on this one to see what you think made it to the top of the Game Boy pile.
Yeah, it's been hard to avoid because you've told me not to look at any of the results, and they've been out there for like 2 weeks at this point, so it's been tricky to avoid. But I've been good.
I'm impressed for sure. Holiday sort of took us away, so we couldn't do these back to back. But now we're back in 2025, and well, John, what do you think is the number 10?
Oh, okay.
I will say, actually, real quick stats before as you think about what number 10 is. There are 154 different games said across approximately 250 votes between both platforms, which is interesting because it's more votes with 10 less games, 10 less great games as a variety. So I found that a little bit fascinating.
Yeah, I think that the top three, I think I can do an educated guess. Everything else is just stabbing in the dark because there's a lot of Game Boy games that people hold in a high regard. But I'm going to say number 10 is Mega Man 5.
It is not Mega Man 5.
Okay.
No. Number 10, and this, again, I'm surprised at the strength of the series, Metroid 2.
Okay. You know what? Probably my least favorite Metroid, but it has its merits.
It's my first Metroid. My cousin had it. Let me borrow it. Like when I visited his place, he didn't get it. And so I'm like, I'm kind of enjoying this. So yeah, he gave me the game, but I never could figure it out. I didn't have the manual, so I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I just spider ball all the walls trying to figure out where to go. So I never figured it out for a long time, but yeah, it's good. It is where we got the iconic shoulder pads for the various suit. But yeah, it makes sense why people aren't too
Samus can crouch now. So like in the NES game, you couldn't crouch to get enemies that were knee height. So that was a nice quality of life improvement. But it's one of those games that like everything kind of looks the same. And that feeling of isolation maybe gets a bit too isolated at times. But there's definitely a lot of very ambitious things that Metroid 2 tries.
Yeah, it definitely is an evolution for the series.
Yeah.
But you know, I didn't place it too high up there because, again, of the sameness of things, and you know, you got a better version now with the 3DS version. But that's fair. Well, I have a list of 11 through 20 where it's like some ones that are so close, it's like almost like but that's just the strength of the Game Boy lineup.
Yeah.
So yeah. All right, John. What is number 9?
I want this to be here somewhere, so I'm going to guess now. Is it Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel?
No, it is not Metal Gear Solid Ghost Babel, and I can tell you right now, unfortunately, it did not make the top 10 and didn't even make the top 20.
A lot of people don't know it exists. It's a genuinely really good game, though.
It made the top 30. I'll tell you
We'll
that.
take that. We'll take that.
It's in there. Believe it or not, actually, I'm not going to say. I'm not. Well, you had one in your list because you made your own vote.
Yeah.
And I can tell you right now, it's not on the top 10. Mole Mania.
Mole Mania, no.
It did not make the top 10. However, it did rank higher than Metal Gear Solid. It actually almost got above 100 points. It was at 98.
Whoa, that's surprising.
So it put in a pretty decent showing.
Yeah,
like it did better than some games I'm kind of surprised by. But
people love moles.
They love moles. But yeah, the actual number 9, Kirby's Dream Land.
Okay,
with
the first one.
Yeah, I should actually mention also Metroid 2 had 444 votes. Kirby's Dream Land had 563 points as far from their votes.
Whoa.
So
This is
there's some big numbers here.
This is a really fun one to revisit because the game takes like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
It's just fun to blast through. There's no copy abilities, but there's just a nice pace to the first Dreamland.
Yeah, I started with Dreamland 2. I've not really played a lot of the original Dreamland, but I've heard it's like challenge mode is actually really tough. So you really did set the bar right there. It was like nice and easy first go through. Okay, now we're gonna kick your butt with the replay.
Yeah. It's one of the few like really out there like new game pluses of that era. Quite ahead of its time in that way.
It is so weird to have a Kirby that can't do copy abilities.
Yeah, that wasn't a thing until the NES. Yeah.
All right, number 8.
Okay. This is Wario Land 3.
It is not Wario Land 3.
I'll get none of these right. Okay.
Not until we get to the top 5 or 3. It is The Legend of Zelda: Oracle of Seasons.
Okay. And I saw you put a post out there saying, don't combine seasons and ages. I'm so glad you did that. No matter what list you see, there's always a Zelda list out there that's like number 5, Oracle of Seasons and Oracle of Ages. And they are so different in quality.
They are very different.
Yeah.
But you cannot compare the two of them. They're completely different dungeons. Yeah. Similar items, but also some unique items amongst the two. Unique plots.
They share the same in common as Link's Awakening does with them, in that they are on the same engine. Like they're practically a trio.
Yeah. And the only reason I think people combine it is because of the whole, like, if you play one version, then the other, then you get the extra version. But this is not a Pokemon situation where they're like red, blue, and yellow are all essentially the same game, just a few very minor differences. These are not the same games. And Oracle of Seasons is a good time. I enjoy my time with it. It's actually has a lot of DNA from Zelda 1 because it was originally meant to be a Zelda 1 remake. So it's a good time. It's a really good time.
Yeah, it takes good advantage of the Game Boy Color too with its seasons. You turn things to snow, turn things to autumn. Whereas I think Ages might be the better game, but its gimmick it's been done before. A Link to the Past did it before. Ocarina of Time did it before.
Classic reviews always talk about how Seasons has the better color palette just because of the seasonal change gimmick. It is a very interesting idea, but it is very classic Zelda in that some of the puzzles are really obtuse. And that tripped me up a few times. But number 8, Oracle of Seasons. All right, John, what's number 7?
Number 7 is I don't think it's going to be here, but Kid Icarus Myths and Monsters.
No, it is not Kid Icarus Myths and Monsters. It did not have a good showing whatsoever. I think it got maybe 20 points. So yeah, I've never played of Myth and Monsters, so
it's not bad, but it's not top 10.
No. Number 7 is Oracle of Ages.
Okay.
So it had 598 points compared to the 587 points. So I have to clarify something I did here because people still didn't listen and combine the two of these games a lot of the time. So what I would do is I would knock out their number 10 and like whatever one they listed first, if they said Ages first, I put that one, and that would get them more points. And it's still, despite seasons and vice versa. And despite that, there were still points where these things were tied. I'm like, you got to be kidding me with this.
Yeah. Can you imagine if they tied and they had to be combined anyway? I think Ages is the better. Sorry. I think Ages is the better game. I don't know if it's one place apart. I think I'd spread them out a bit more than this, but it's what the people say, so we can't argue against them.
Yeah. It's one of those, again, the strength of the Game Boy lineup where I don't know if I fully agree with everything that's in here. I feel like there should be the Game Boy has more variety than what this is providing so far.
For sure.
All right. Number 6.
All right, number 6, I'm going to bring back a previous guess, because I don't remember if you said where it was, but Mega Man 5?
I did not say where it was because I wanted you to keep guessing, just in case I didn't want to give you all the indications. Yeah. But no, it is not Mega Man 5. Mega Man 5 did not make the top 10. It is in the top 20, though.
Okay.
But no, number 6 is Donkey Kong 94.
I was hoping this would be like top 3. Oh, it's.
I was rooting for it too. It has 850 points. There is a clear difference. It had got a much better, like it is like 250 points above Oracle of Ages, which is a good showing for beating out a Zelda game.
Yeah.
But still, the others got way more.
I really hope when this hits NSO that it just gets a resurgence, because I think a lot of people don't know what it is, or I've never played it. It's so good. It's probably the best Mario game on the Game Boy. I wish this would be higher, but I'm glad it's top 10.
It's such a classic, and I wonder how many kids picked. I obviously, a lot of people obviously know the gimmick now, but I wonder how many kids picked up Donkey Kong 94 just expecting a straight port, and all of a sudden those extra levels showed up.
That was
I feel
my
like
experience.
they advertised it.
Yeah,
really?
I didn't I didn't know of this game growing up, but I saw it on the 3DS eShop one day, and I thought it was just a Game Boy version of Donkey Kong, so I bought it, and then it just kept going, and it was legit a surprise. I'd never heard the twist. I'd never heard people talk about it. Yeah, it was so nice to experience it that way.
Mm-hmm. There was a while where nobody really talked about Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
It was just there, and then it's like that word of mouth really started building up over time.
Yeah,
and there it is. So, yeah, still great. Can't wait for this thing to come to the NSO. It really needs to come to the NSO.
It does. They keep saying every Donkey Kong country's on NSO. It's like, well, you can get more Donkey Kong on there, though.
We got all the Donkey Kong countries. We got all the Donkey Kong lands. Why is Donkey Kong 94 not there?
I don't know.
I think we got Donkey Kong Junior Math, don't we?
We have Donkey Kong Junior Math, yeah, but no DK94.
Of course. All right. What's number 5, John?
Number 5 is Link's Awakening.
It is not Link's Awakening. You're going to be shocked by this one. It is Tetris.
At number 5?
At number 5.
Huh.
Okay. Yeah,
I
was. It got over to put into comparison. It got over 1,000 points, and there's only an 80-point difference between it and 4 and 3.
Wow.
1 and 2 ran away with things, but 3, 4, and 5 are really close to each other.
This is actually quite shocking. Like Tetris is always a top 1, top 2 Game Boy game. I wonder what's shifted this.
I think it's just age and the fact there's so many other Tetrises that this Tetris might feel a little basic now.
Maybe I think that's the charm, though. I think like just getting rid of being able to hold pieces and just dealing with what you have. That's kind of what makes this one so good.
Yeah, this is my introduction to Tetris. I think it's a lot of people's introduction to Tetris because it was the pack-in game. And I distinctly remember card trips where my mom would be like, hey, can I play Tetris for a little bit? I'm like, all right. Everybody likes Tetris. Especially back in the day, it was just that addictive quality to it. And I had no idea Mario and Luigi were in this game until you said something because of the multiplayer.
When you played
multiplayer, I never played multiplayer.
One of you's Mario, one of you's Luigi. I didn't think I knew that either. Because like for link cables, that was basically a Pokemon thing for me. And so playing on NSO, you get to play all these games multiplayer properly for the first time for me at least. Yeah, it's rad. There's some Nintendo stuff in there.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad it made the top 10. I think if any Tetris is going to do it, it's probably going to be this one to get to a top 10 of a system. But it is shocking that it isn't a little bit higher up.
Yeah.
So what beat it, John? What's number 4?
All right. Number 4. I'm going to guess there are 2 Pokemons here. So I think number 4 is Gen 1, Red, Blue, and Yellow.
It is not Red, Blue, and Yellow.
Okay.
Number 4 is Super Mario Land 2.
Respectable.
Yeah. I like Super Mario Land 2. It felt like a pretty decent replacement for. I didn't have a Super Nintendo growing up, so I'd be seeing, World and being like, oh. But then you have the spin move in this, and like, okay, it's you just squint and it's kind of close. But you also have the introduction of Wario.
Yes.
There's a lot of charm to this game. It's easy. It is short, longer than the first Mario Land, but it is still short.
As a kid, it didn't feel that easy. Revisiting it now, for sure.
I had a rough time against Wario as a kid.
Yeah. And I love all the zones in here. Like you go through a giant mechanical Mario, you go to space, you're stomping on ants. Like there's so much enemy variety to everything, despite it all being monochrome. Yeah, this is just one of the coolest Mario games, even though it still feels a little bit with its physics. You can tell it's not from the core Mario team. But despite all that, it's such a charming game.
Yeah. The bunny suit needs to come back.
Yes.
The bunny suit is really fun.
I love Wario as a villain. I
good
want
time.
Wario to be a villain again.
Yeah, I don't get that as much anymore. Wario took over after this. It was nothing but Wario games. I think that the team was like, okay, we just made this new character. He seems kind of popular. Let's do something with him.
Yeah.
And I think that's how that all picked up. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, Super Mario Land 2 with 1,041 points, literally 40 points ahead of Tetris. It was back and forth for a while. Actually, I think it was behind for a while. Then all of a sudden it got a surge of people.
Live audiences disappeared then after the GBA. Not entirely true. There was a Wii Wario Land. Then he disappeared.
Yeah. that was our last look at Wario. All right, number 3.
I still think both Pokemons are there, but they might be 1 and 2. So I'm still going to stick with this being Gen 1 at number 3.
You are correct.
Okay.
This is Gen 1. Yeah. With 1,087 points, Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow, which actually is a better showing than I thought. For a while, it was kind of lagging behind, and a lot of people just started putting Gen 1 in there as well. And yeah, it's a classic. It's what I grew up with, but boy, is it, having replayed it a few years ago, you can feel the age, the limited item space, the lack of like what a move does.
Psychic just takes everything in this game. It has like no weakness.
no weakness whatsoever. I think the lack of items, I distinctly remember the lack of item descriptions, because there was, I think, I had my Squirtle, and I think I remember getting rid of something, thinking it was like the better version of a previous move, and it ended up being a defensive move. I'm like, oh, this sucks.
It's easy to look at this game and say like the balancing isn't very good. There's some types which are clearly better, but despite all that, it's still so easy to see why it was as big as it was.
Yeah.
As a kid, like I couldn't just go to the park on my own or something like that. So Pokemon felt freeing, like being able to just walk to different towns and just be free. And it's still so nice for that. And I love too, there's one point where you can choose which gym you want to go to, because 2 of them become open to you at once. So there's a little bit of freedom in there, and counter kind of loops around it in a nice way. So like, despite it clearly being refined upon, Gen 1 is still delightful.
Oh yeah, it's still a great time. This is the game this game is why the Game Boy's life is so long.
Yes. Yeah, this extended it by like 5 years.
Yeah, the Game Boy was probably on its way out. And then Pokemon dropped, and it was just a surge. And all of a sudden, all kinds of other companies started really paying attention to it again. And then we got the Game Boy Color that sort of helped extend its lifespan. It's like you cannot take away that away from Gen 1. Like, holy crap.
Yeah. And it was treated as this craze that was going to burst at any moment, but they somehow just kept it going.
It's amazing, because I remember it's a fad. It's a fad. It was growing up, and they somehow found a way to just. I think honestly, I think it's just because of the release schedule. They didn't pump them out like crazy. Because look at what happened to Yokai Watch. People love Yokai Watch, but they put out far too many games far too quickly.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's a real evolution between this one and Gen 2, which I'm sure we'll get to at probably number 1. So number 2. We haven't said Link's Awakening yet, have we?
We have not.
So it's Link's Awakening, isn't it?
It is Link's Awakening, yes. With a commanding 1,590 points. For comparison, only Mario 3 on the NES got above 1,000 points. People came out and voted, and the top 5 just ran away with it as far as getting above 1,000 points. That's incredible.
Yeah. Link's Awakening is still a really good game. There's some issues with the Game Boy version, like if you're not wearing the power bracelet and you touch a boulder, you just get this very slow scroll of text saying like you can't pick this up. And you can feel the item limitation. You've got to switch items a bunch because it's just A and B, and that doesn't have to be your sword either. So you're switching all the time. But despite all that, it's they didn't make concessions putting Zelda on a handheld. A lot of franchises, you can say like this is the small handheld version. Whereas this was just a standalone A Link to the Past follow-up rather than a smaller version of it. And you can tell why it's so popular. It's incredibly charming, even if there are some problems I have with it.
Yeah, it's the handheld definitely, the lack of buttons definitely holds it back in certain ways, but there's definitely a charm there. It's they have these very interesting characters to because yeah, this came out after Link to the Past, correct?
Yeah, after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the townspeople I think are more interesting in their ways. There
Yeah.
it gets weird. There I think that's why it sticks out for so many people, because this game, it gets so weird, and then it has probably one of the more somber endings
Yeah, for
of a
sure.
Zelda game.
Yeah, especially for a Game Boy game. Like many Game Boy games didn't really have stories. Many Zelda games didn't have like bombastic stories. It was just kind of, go through the town, get stronger, beat Ganon. And this just
Hmm.
kind of, it made it more personal, which felt really tied to a handheld. Um, and yeah, I think like looking back, this is absolutely one of the best games of that era, especially when you compare it to the NES, because these are two 8-bit
Hmm.
consoles. And Link's Awakening is so far ahead of what Zelda 1 was achieving, technically at
Seriously.
least. Yeah, I think there's a conversation to be had about whether the Oracle games can exceed Link's Awakening. I think Ages can in many regards, but
Yeah.
Link's Awakening is for sure the more popular one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's why a lot of people hope for Ages and Seasons to get the Link's Awakening treatment, because more people need to experience it and see what they're all about.
Yeah.
So, oh well. But yeah, I'd ask what you think Gen 1 is, but I think you know
Yeah, yeah. Number one
what
is
your number
definitely
one is.
Pokemon Silver, Gold, and Crystal.
Yep, with 1,682. Shockingly not that far ahead of Link's Awakening.
Yeah. But this, I expected it would be this or Tetris, but Tetris was way back. So yeah, of course it's Gen
Hmm.
2. These just kind of took Gen 1 and ran with it. There's way better
Hmm.
balancing. The world feels grander, and it's unforgettable to return to Kanto. With
Hmm.
every Pokemon generation, people are always like, so which region are we visiting in the post game? And we've not done that since Gen
No.
2. It's not a standard. It's just something they tried, and people still want that over and over again. And that moment of battling Red at the top of the mountain is incredible. Like, it's
Yeah.
impossible to forget. You could find shinies because it's in color now. So there's always that small chance of each encounter being special. Yeah, Gen 2 is just absolutely wonderful.
Yeah. There are some small complaints. Again, there's some learning curves here, or like for the team, where uh, I feel like there's a lot more grinding necessary. Like there's some massive level jumps that you have to sort of accommodate for at times. That's a bit of a bit of a pain. Nothing too bad, but it certainly can take up some time. And there's not great ways to level up. And the distribution of the new Pokemon isn't the best. Like you'll come across a lot of old Pokemon like
That's true.
much more often. So again, it's not perfect. I know a lot of people still hold Gen 2 as like the best Pokemon game, and maybe even Heart Gold, Soul Silver is probably going
It's Gen
to play.
5. That's the
It
best
is
one.
Gen 5. Gen 5 is the best one. I will defend the Gen 5 1 and 2 uh, to the death. But yeah, as Tuxbane points out, yeah, Dark Steel type. Let's take care of
Yes.
that freaking psychic strength, or having different Pokeballs. Really expanding that. The acorns was a pain in the butt as far as like getting a lot of those Pokeballs, but it did lead to the idea of we should have different types of Pokeballs that uh, are good for other things.
Yeah.
So
I,
I
I
mean,
loved
I played these games to death.
I
Like,
love tracking down the legendary dogs as well. It's
mhm,
can be cumbersome, but it felt like an adventure. Like with the birds in Gen 1, like they all have like their own little labyrinths. But once you find them, you found them. Whereas it feels like an actual quest to encounter these, and then actually catching them is another thing. So yeah,
mhm.
it just felt big, Gen 2.
Yeah, Gen 1 and Gen 2 are the only Pokemon games I ever completed the Pokedex for.
Mm.
So that always felt like a big deal. But also when I realized like you don't really get anything for this. It's just I get to see all the Pokedex
You
entries.
get self-actualization. That's what you get.
Yeah, that's about it. So yeah, that is our top 10. But I do want to shout out the what hit the top 20,
Mhm.
because if you noticed, outside of Tetris, this is very Nintendo focused.
Extremely. And Nintendo published Tetris as well.
That's true. Unfortunately, things did uh, have a little bit more variety in the top 20, but unfortunately none of those made it in. And one I was rooting for, and I would claim should be in the top 10 instead of Metroid 2, number 11 was Wario Land 3.
I was expecting that to be in here somewhere. I think I called it out near the beginning. It's a shame it didn't make it. Wario Land 3
missed it by 40 points.
Yeah. Yeah, Metroid 2 I think is good. It is a good game.
It is good.
I don't think I'd put it in my top 10 though.
Wario Land 3 is more polished and more fun, in my opinion. But crazy enough, only 8 points behind Wario Land 3 was the Pokemon trading card game.
Oh, okay.
People love that game.
Yeah.
So
it's a cool one to have. Pokemon Puzzle Challenge is also a very good one. I hope that shows up somewhere.
It hit the top 30. It wasn't quite to the same level. I put that on my list because I struggle with I wasn't very good at the trading card game, so I didn't get very far in it. I appreciate it. I like it. But I didn't get very far in it. So that's why I put the Pokemon Puzzle Challenge. Because I was seeing Pokemon Puzzle League, and I was like, I want that, but I don't have an N64.
Well, Puzzle Challenge, it's like you're going through the league. It's like tied to Gen 2. It's nice.
It is very cool. Number 13 was Kirby's Dream Land 2, about 60 points behind. Honestly, top 20 is dominated by Wario Land because number 14 was the original Wario Land at 268. 15 was Super Mario Land. Okay. And then Wario Land 2 behind it by only 10 points at number 16.
I think that's the correct land ranking. 3, 1, 2.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And then only 4 points behind Wario Land 2, the original Shantae.
Huh, okay. It's hard to say how many people played this. They almost certainly didn't on original hardware, but on 3DS Virtual Console, probably a lot more.
That's how I did it, but they also just had that the other re-release.
Yeah, the limited run cartridge as well. Yeah,
yeah. So it is more possible. I will. Having played Risky's Revenge first, and going back to the original Shantae, you can definitely feel its origins, but it's definitely technically impressive at the time.
Very, very so. Yeah,
it is an extremely late Game Boy game.
Yeah, it's like 2001 or something.
Something like that. Yeah. Number 18 was Mega Man 5.
Okay. I think that should be higher. It's a very good game. It's the best Mega Man game on Game Boy. Yeah.
It should be higher, but also one I think should be a little bit higher, Final Fantasy Adventure. I've always made the controversial statement that I actually prefer Final Fantasy Adventure to Link's Awakening.
Well, okay.
But I know that people don't exactly agree with me, but something about Final Fantasy Adventure really clicked with me in a way that Link's Awakening didn't when I played it on Game Boy. But this number 20 made me happy, at least that it got this kind of representation. Castlevania 2, Belmont's Revenge.
Cool. Yes.
That's an underrated Castlevania. It has a bit of a start that's Mega Man-esque, where you get to pick between 4 different levels in any order. Then you go into the final Dracula castle. And actually plays well, unlike the original. I will say, I know you also voted for the Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls.
I was not expecting that in the top 10, so I'm glad it's there somewhere.
It got above 50 points.
Okay.
It actually tied with Dr. Mario.
Interesting. Okay.
It's number 32.
Number 32.
So that's pretty decent.
If that was officially localized, I think that would be way higher than it is. But
yeah,
I understand most people have not played that game.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just limited in how many people can actually play it, so it struggles. It's why I wish I could get more worldwide with these, but I do my best that I can just so we have a bit of it. But yeah, there's the Game Boy / Game Boy Color list. I think it's good. No matter what we got, it's going to be a strong list.
Yeah.
Like the Game Boy lineup is way better than people give it credit for or remember it with.
I think I prefer Game Boy to NES looking back.
That's hard to say because a lot of Game Boy is just here's the NES game.
Some of it is, yeah.
When you get to the original titles, it's a little better, but it's again such an age range where you have like something so simple at the beginning of the lifespan, and you get towards the end and look at Shantae and that kind of stuff. It's like, geez.
Yeah, it's a weird mix of NES and Super Nintendo. We've got that sort of era of design, but still sort of stuck in 8-bit territory, and it can get really interesting seeing what developers did with that.
Yeah, work within those limitations, especially when it lasted for so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, that is the top 10 greatest games for the Game Boy / Game Boy Color, according to all of you. I appreciate all the votes. We'll be back next week to discuss the results for the top 10 Sega Master System games of all time, still sticking in the 8-bit era. That should be interesting. It's another. I already have the results. If you're on my Bluesky, you can see those. If you want to be spoiled, you don't have to. And I'm curious what you're going to think about this lineup. It has a variety.
Yeah.
But also, you can definitely tell the taste, the American taste and the European taste and South American taste kind of clashing with this one.
It's going to be a very interesting one. I think a lot of people know the library from Game Gear, but Master System does have a lot of its own exclusive games. I'm hoping that we get a good selection here.
Yeah. So, yep. Look forward to that. And that pretty much covers it for our top 10 Game Boy games discussion. So thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/dvgaming. But even just subscribing to the channel and ringing that bell helps us a ton. So until next time, bye.